Veterinary ophthalmology is not my life, but it's how I lived my life.
You just take it for granted sometimes where we are in time and fail to look back at the hard work that they did to lay the groundwork. And without that, we wouldn't be half of what we are today.
Before the beginning was the ASVO. That's where we kind of all met each other. And I think that started in 1957, the year I graduated.
And that was people that were just interested in ophthalmology, and that was it. There was no training or anything of the sort. They would
just had an interest in the eyes.
Well, the ASVO continued to grow. And in 1967, that Bill called me, but he had talked to the AVMA about starting a specialty, and they told him that you have to have at least 5 people. And so he called me, he said, would you be part of it? And I said, I'd be happy to.
Bill called me also. He said, Roy, I need a 5th guy for my group. Can you join us? Sure, why not?
Oh, the first president was Bill McGrain, and our first meeting, there were about 10 of us. I was the baby, 30-ish. And everybody gave a paper. I think mine was on dacryocyst rhinography in the dog and cat, which I was just doing at the time.
I got a phone call. I think it was from Bill McGrain. He said, do you want to be a member of the college? And I went, well, sure. And that's how it started. And I think Gus Aguirre, I don't know whether this is true or not, but I think Gus Aguirre and I were the last 2 that were brought into the college as charter members.
The first time I heard about it is I received a letter saying, congratulations, you have been grandfathered into the college, the ACVO college, which was a great thing to get, and it avoided taking an exam. This was well above my pay line at the time. I had just finished my residency and fellowship, and I was not part of any discussion. My views were not asked. I never even knew that the organization was moving in that direction.
We relied on Lonnie, Dr. Rubin. Lonnie was brilliant. And so he wrote up most of our constitution, the bylaws, our purpose for the AVMA, and then
who was available for diplomate status.
Yeah. He did that for us, and then we were on probation, and we were approved, I think, 3 years later. Here we are, a new college, we're off and running, and then at the San Francisco meeting, as we're all walking out, here's somebody handing summons for antitrust summons. The ACVO got one, SURF got one, the AVMA got one, and 11 members. I think it was 11 members, or was it 11
members?
Yeah, Lon and myself.
The threat was to specialties in veterinary medicine, period. This was a suit that really challenged veterinary medicine as to whether or not we should develop specialties.
That was a serious moment, and that really scared the hell out of everybody.
Everybody went out and bought insurance.
And they couldn't get insurance. They didn't have insurance, ran a trust for the guys, so nobody had insurance.
I had received the gavel and became the president of the ACVO, and I walked off the podium, went with everybody else to exit the room, and there was a guy standing there in a suit. And he said, Dr. Gillette? I said, yes. He said, here's your subpoena. And I was subpoenaed there, walking out of my first 10 minutes of being ACVO president.
I called our attorney and talked to him, I don't know how long, about an hour, and I find out I got a bill for $100 for an hour talk.
That's all?
And that was
You got cheap.
No other of the specialty boards have ever been sued because of what we did in ophthalmology.
Had we lost that suit,
we would have been in
Well, there
big
wouldn't have been,
trouble.
there wouldn't have been any boards, period.
You're right, there would not have been any boards, period.
In any
Boards
specialty.
in veterinary medicine is absolutely, without a doubt in my mind, the best thing that ever happened to veterinary medicine.
It's funny how the early groups of guys that started, how frugal we all were as far as what we spent our money on. You know, we weren't making much money. What did you charge for a cataract when you first got out of school?
I don't think it was much more than $400.
Yeah.
That was pretty
$400.
That was high. I charged
Yeah.
$200.
fee would be a couple $100.
Yeah, $200.
I remember
was it.
$100 I got for
Right.
my first one.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
Well,
that's
we
one or
weren't-
two eyes.
We were all first namers, we all loved each other, we all joked with each other.
Or hated.
All right.
But we hid that very well.
I'm Ralph Hamer. I am currently a clinical professor here at the University of Florida. My mentors were Dr. Glenn Severin, again, one of our founding members, and Dr. Steve Roberts. So I fear generations of ophthalmology residents and the ophthalmologists I have now don't have a real touchstone or direct connection to those people. You know, even starting back in 1987, 88, you know, it was a very small college and everybody knew everybody, which was a good thing and could be a bad thing sometimes too. But to know who these people are, to know who they were, to know what they did, you know, one of my former residents said, these were the people who invented the eyeball. And, you know, and it sort of is true. They were the people who took that time and they worked with human people and they did this stuff and to make this be a college.
So Charlie Martin was a professor at Georgia, and I was in practice, in private general practice in Greenville, South Carolina. So the second year that I was in practice, I made it part of my contract with my employer that I could reach out once a month to a various, ophthalmologists and get a 3 or 4 day weekend to go and visit and make some contacts. And the first place that I thought of was the closest, and that was Georgia. Just out of the blue, I contacted Dr. Martin and Dr. Kazwan, and they were gracious enough to let me come down and talk to them. And in fact, they spent the entire day with me. Looking back on it now on this side of the table, if just to be honest with you, if somebody were to call me asking for that same favor, I'd probably say no, because your time is at such a premium, and they spent the entire day with me.
Working at the University of Florida, especially with Dr. Gillette, he is just an amazing man. When you look at the whole picture, not only is he a great ophthalmologist, but he's a great professor, he's a great family man, he is a pillar in his community, he's very active in his church, and he's just a great guy. I learned so much both about how to be an ophthalmologist, but also just how to be an all-around person, as far as caring for those around you, putting your family first, even though you have a career, and things like that.
Having students is like having kids. You get to see them when they're good and bad. You also hopefully get to shape them so that they're better at the end. And this is, I think, basically the teaching. I've always enjoyed watching a student from a freshman to a senior and how they've changed, matured, gotten smarter.
I spent 34 years at the University of Florida, and that's where I met Dr. Gillette in 1981. I'm from the University of Illinois, and I had acquaintance with Dr. Lloyd Helper at the University of Illinois and Dr. Bill McGrain, who were two of the founders. And Dr. McGrain was actually, he founded the specialty in some sense, even before other people organized. Had some personal issues that had to be dealt with regarding health, and they all got worked out. But we got to Florida, and it changed my life. And so Dr. Gillette and Dr. Helper and Dr. McGrain and a few others, they started the path that and a lifestyle for myself that I pursued and continue to pursue. Has lasted, since 1981. So,
I started out going to vet school as a cowboy. I wanted it, instead of going around messing around with cattle, I thought it'd be better to be a veterinarian.
I thought I was the only one who wanted to be a cowboy. I was going to be a cowboy until I began to realize what cowboys really did. So I thought, well, I'm going to become a rancher.
And then I can have horses and
Then you
cattle.
realize what
and
they
they'll
do.
take care of the cattle and I'll play cowboy. I'll be Roy Rogers. Well, anyway, found out that it took a lot of money to become a rancher. So somehow or other I got interested. I was pointed towards veterinary medicine. Well, in vet school, you had to go out into these barnyards and wrestle steers and heifers. I weighed 110 pounds. There wasn't a steer or a heifer that I could handle, that's for sure. And I realized large animal medicine was not for me.
In pre-vet, I worked for the Humane Society in Chicago, the Anti-Cruelty Society. And I was still in pre-vet, and a lady came in with 2 sets of ophthalmic instruments, 30 beautiful stainless steel instruments. All she wanted was $1 a piece for those instruments. So the Humane Society bought one, and I decided to buy one at that time. So I had spent more than a whole week's wages. I was paid $30 a week. I spent 40, so I was in the hole. But I kept those, and when I got to Iowa State, and I went to the clinic, and I asked anybody, we have an ophthalmologist here, and it happened to be Hugh Simpson. And I said, Hugh, and I showed him the instruments I had, and they were just beautiful. And he just was really excited to see them. I said, they're yours until I graduate, if you'll teach me how to do ophthalmology when I get in clinics, which would be when I'd be a junior. And I was lucky enough in my sophomore year to work for Harlan Jensen and as one summer. But that was kind of what got me into ophthalmology. And I just felt like the good Lord was kind of directing me right from the beginning.
Well, I have a story about how I got into ophthalmology. I was a senior student, and I was assisting Lon, which later he was my best friend, and he was doing a surgery, and he was the worst surgeon in the world. I mean, he was terrible. But he would spend a lot of time at these laboratories. I learned from him and shared some of the contracts, and I still do some of the toxicology. But he was miraculous in that he would go to 2 or 3 labs which around the Philadelphia area, and then come back to school and teach an hour, and then go back to another lab, and just unbelievable.
Well, I got involved because of Roy. When I was at the ASPCA, I saw a lot of good case material with Roy, and then we saved the good cases, and we did look at them, tried to get them to come back in the evening to review them. And then when I went to Cornell as a resident, they did not have anybody in ophthalmology. They did not have any real specialists. They had somebody who was interested in cardiology, but at that time there were no specialists in that school. I realized I needed additional training, and that's why I went to Stanford and trained with Ray. Got a second year of NIH fellowships with Lionel Rubin, and we had
That's where we met.
That's where we met, right.
Steve was a neatnik. An absolute
Yes,
neatnik.
I agree.
And Lon and
And living with a slob.
And Lon and I smoked at that time, and what we did on occasion would put our ashes on Steve's desk, and he'd come in so pissed off.
The thing that impresses me so much about the profession over a period of time is the tremendous database that has been created in the veterinary profession and the amount of literature that's available. I think within our group, there are some people that should really be congratulated. People like Kirk Gillette, that has, for periods of years, collected a tremendous amount of material and published it into textbook form, but I mean, it's available for everybody to take a look at.
The college recognized early on that if you were going to be a viable college, we had to have a journal, we had to have good books, we had to have leadership, we had to have jobs, but we also needed to train and have a constant source of new people. The other thing I think that the new people at ophthalmology don't recognize is it took us a while to get there. It wasn't all easy stuff. occasionally you have to step on people to get where you're going. And you have to decide, is it worth it or not? But it's been a good ride. And I think the people in ophthalmology are a good group of people and really tremendously balanced.
My name is Dan Wolf. In vet school, was introduced to ophthalmology by Milt Wyman, and he kind of started the little spark of interest. But I did go to general practice for 5 years and met Sam Venisi in Chicago. And he kind of lit the torch under me for interest in ophthalmology and actually set up a nice residency at the local medical school in conjunction with his practice in Chicago. And it went from there, and it's been an addiction ever since.
I've been in the business now about 40 years, and I'm so indebted to Dr. Jensen and the ACVO for preparing me for this varied career. And I view very fondly my time with Glenn Severn at Colorado State, with Dr. Sam Venisi and Gretchen Schmidt in Chicago, and also spent time at Ohio State, where Dr. Wyman was the ophthalmologist. So again, Dr. Jensen was responsible for all of those opportunities that held me in good stead when I went to sit for my board exams.
Well, my first experience with Dr. Martin was my first day on as I came to the University of Georgia. And I'll admit I was a little intimidated at first because I had done a little research. I didn't know exactly who he was at first, but then I quickly discovered he was a big deal. He was one of the charter members, and he was one of the pioneers in the field of ophthalmology, veterinary ophthalmology. So I kind of was nervous at first. So when you meet him, he can be a little intimidating when you know his knowledge base, but then you quickly discover he's very warm, very friendly. Him and his wife Marilyn took us in like family, my wife and I. We spent every Thanksgiving at my time in Georgia with him and his family. And basically, it's every time we go to an ACVO meeting, it's like having a reunion with a family reunion again with the Martins. So we look forward to being with Charlie and Marilyn every year.
What I oftentimes enjoyed in the early days and going to the meetings was to put a face to these people I'd been reading their articles on, and you get to know them and personalities and all that was interacting with these big giants of the profession. And I like to do that with when I had residents with me, to take them around and introduce them to some of these names. But to be able to put a face to Bill McGrain, it just means something more than reading the article or the book that he had or whatever. Put the whole picture together.
Several years ago, the meeting was at Monterey. I think it was, 2 or 3 years ago.
Right.
Maggie was with me, and we were walking down the hall. We all have our badges on, and this young lady's coming this way, and she kind of looks, and she says, "You're Dr. Bellhorn?" "Yeah, I'm Dr. Bellhorn." She says, "I've read so much about you, I thought sure you'd be dead by now."
I visit our college every once in a while, and I walk down the hallway and I see these young people with a white thing on, stethoscopes around their eyes, associate professor, and they look like teenagers, for pity's sake.
They are.
They are.
And they said, "Can I help you, sir?" I've been with over 32 years at the university, and I say, "Look at the picture up there. That was me." These kids are so bright, and they're so young, and I think it's invigorating for me to see that happening, and I just thank God that we have contributed. Maybe not as much as today, but we have contributed to the growth of our discipline. And I'm very proud of it. I don't care what anybody says. I'm very proud of it. And even though I don't believe half of what you say, I'm proud of you too.
I'll drink to that.
Veterinary college really, or the ophthalmology college really opened the doors for so many things. And we started bringing in, or not bringing in, but it became fairly known that that our practice would take in student externs, and if they were interns, usually kids came in for about a month. A lot of them would stay at our home. I think we had something like 25 different young people come through our practice in the last 20 years of the practice?
I would say probably 15 of the ACVO members are former students of mine, and another 50 or 60 are former residents and postdocs of mine. And hopefully you've turned some people on, and your family continues to grow.
When they talk about grandfathers, and they really were fatherly to us.
You know, it's a welcoming college. If we want you in, we want you to be a peer, we're treating you right, and those people exemplified that.
Well, I think sometimes we don't appreciate those that go before us and all they have done for the profession and for us individually.
Everybody that came after them owes a great deal of gratitude to what they did to encourage the development of the profession.
I determined that I wanted to be a veterinarian at age 9 and stuck to my guns. I mean, I was a poor kid from Brooklyn who made it through. And I wouldn't change my life at all. I mean, I loved what I did.
It's been a great ride for me, and if I had to do it over again, I wouldn't change a thing. I think the friends that I've made in ophthalmology, I could never reduplicate in any other way that I can think of at the present time.
I had no plan whatsoever. I began doing ophthalmology. I got frustrated. I happened to meet an ophthalmologist, a human ophthalmologist, a fantastic professor, and it just kept going. All I can say is I look back, I had no idea that I would ever be anywhere near where I am today. This has been a fantastic run, and you guys have made it just so much more enjoyable, challenging, and fun.
I know in my lifetime, I've seen our profession grow, and it did grow because of these folks here. If I had to change anything, I would change the ability to become more involved in my students and my residents. I loved every one of them, and I wish I could have been more close to each of them than I have been in my life.
Most of us came from, first people in the family to graduate from university, have the opportunities that we had at the time. It's hard to wish for anything more.
My thought is do what you love and practice and live your life as critically as you like, but also try and put balance in your life.
I certainly loved the companionship, the fun that we all had. I really do.
The important thing is that we've had it.
Yeah, right.
I mean, there's a lot of them out there that don't have that same kind of camaraderie. And we can look back and we can laugh, we can enjoy.
Sometimes at the time that you did it, it wasn't enjoyable, but you can laugh at it afterwards.